It's a great pleasure to welcome our first speaker, Arnie Gundersen, who's a nuclear engineer, author, and whistleblower. Arnie,
Thank you for coming. In 15 minutes, I'd like to share briefly what I know happened at Fukushima. There's 4 lessons that I think we can take away based on that experience. The first lesson is that nuclear accidents happen frequently. In my career, 40 years in the nuclear industry, there's been 5 meltdowns. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and now 3 at Fukushima. So if you take 35 years divided by 5, you wind up with an accident frequency of about once every 7 years. Now, the nuclear industry says it's a 1 in a million chance. And if you take 1 million in the numerator and 400 power plants in the denominator, you wind up with an accident frequency of about every 2,500 years. So the numbers the nuclear industry is using to cite nuclear power plants are once every 2,500 years, compared to experience, which tells us a nuclear accident is going to happen about once every decade. And I think that's a serious policy gap. Wherever I go, the policymakers who influence legislation have convinced legislators that this is not going to happen in a lifetime, despite 5 have happened in my professional career. So point number 1 is that accidents happen frequently. Point number 2 is that accidents are getting worse, more severe, not less severe. 3 Mile Island was a partial core meltdown. And within a year and a half, I had people working at 3 Mile Island, had gotten the camera down into the vessel, and were able to photograph the nuclear core. Chernobyl was a full meltdown, so we went from a partial meltdown to a full meltdown. But again, within a year, the Soviets were able to get underneath the reactor and take a photograph of the nuclear core. So it's called the elephant's foot. If you go up on Google and Google elephant's foot, you can see the Chernobyl core, molten blob, kind of gray, looks like an elephant's foot. And now we're at Fukushima with 3 meltdowns. And the meltdowns are so horrific, we haven't done anywhere near the nuclear cores to be able to photograph the condition there. So we've gone from a partial meltdown to a full meltdown to a triple meltdown in the 40 years that I've been in the industry. So frequency is increasing, and the magnitude of the damage is increasing. Well, the next point is that Fukushima was a disaster. It wasn't an accident. You know, an accident is when you're driving at night and a deer runs across the front of your car and you hit it and go in the ditch. That's an accident. But the Daiichi disaster was created by American engineers at Basco, which is in Manhattan, and out in San Jose, in California. This was a design problem that the engineers knew of when they built the plant. Historically, tsunamis as high as 20 meters have hit the Japanese coast, and in fact, in the last 100 years, there was a 28-meter tsunami just south of the Daiichi site. But yet they built the wall 4 meters high. So I can't call the Daiichi accident an accident. It's a man-made disaster. And as bad as it is, point number 3 is as bad as Daiichi is, it could have been 14 times to 100 times worse. And the reason for that is this. The tsunami that was kicked off by the earthquake destroyed Daiichi, but it also destroyed the cooling pumps at Daini, Fukushima Daini, which is about 6 miles to the south. And it also destroyed the cooling pumps at Anagawa. There were 3 units, which is about 100 miles to the north. And it also destroyed the cooling pumps at Tokai. There were 14 reactors that had their cooling pumps destroyed. And it wasn't as if the tsunami took out the diesel generators and destroyed the electricity. Whether or not the diesels had been meters high, the disaster would have happened anyway because the tsunami wiped out the cooling pumps that were needed to remove the nuclear heat. So what happened there was that at those 14 reactors, there was 37 diesels that were designed to keep those plants cool. 24 of them failed from the tsunami. And that's something you just don't hear about in the media. This was not a problem specific to Daiichi. Daini was in trouble for 6 days. Kanagawa was in trouble for 2 days, and Tokai for about a week, because they couldn't keep the plants cool enough. The worst plants were the reactors, the 6 reactors at Daiichi, but 14 reactors were involved. What saved the day was luck and courage. So we've got this high technology device that low technology is what wound up rescuing the day. And courage, of course, at Daiichi, there was the famous Fukushima 50. In fact, there were probably close to 100 people that stayed behind, risked their life out of love for the manager who ran the plant. And they stayed behind and received extraordinary radiation exposures and were able to wrestle the nuclear dragon to the ground. But at Daini, the same problems were happening. And the same at Angawa, the same at Tokai. So we had 14 reactors near meltdown. And I believe we'll find that some of the fuel was damaged at one of the Daini reactors as well. But we had 3 complete meltdowns at Fukushima Daiichi. Daiichi, by the way, means 1, so it's Fukushima 1, the first Fukushima site, which had 6 nukes. And Daini means 2, Fukushima 2, the second Fukushima site, which had 4 nukes. And at, so between them, there were 10 reactors near meltdown. Now here's where luck came in. And it's hard to imagine luck in the middle of a nuclear accident. But the key was that it happened during the day on a weekday. If the accident happened at night or 12 hours later, instead of on a Friday afternoon, if it had happened at Saturday morning, instead of 1,000 people at Daiichi and 1,000 people at Daini, there would have been 100 people. The infrastructure would have been destroyed, and there would not have been enough people to wrestle those nuclear dragons to the ground. So a 12-hour difference in when that earthquake hit and when the tsunami hit meant the difference of the destruction of Japan and likely the total contamination of the northern hemisphere. So accidents are happening once a decade. They're getting worse, not better. And the accident, the disaster that Fukushima Daiichi could have been 100 times worse were it not for luck and courage. The fourth point is that of all the technologies available for us to generate electricity, nuclear is unique in that it can destroy the fabric of a country overnight. We have Gorbachev, Nikolai Gorbachev, in his memoirs, says that the collapse of the Soviet Union was not due to perestroika. It was due to Chernobyl. So we've got a political system that collapsed because of a nuclear accident. Over the years, I've gotten to know well Naoto Kan, and of course he had to face the fact that he might have to evacuate Tokyo with 35 million people and relocate them perhaps forever. And he's basically come to the conclusion that nuclear power and civilization are fundamentally incompatible, and is out there campaigning against nuclear power in Europe as well as here in the UK and of course in Japan. So now, we have Gorbachev, a communist, I want to say dictator, but that's not quite the right word. And then we had on the right, we have Gorbachev, and on the left we have Khan. But in addition, 3 other Japanese prime ministers representing the conservative wing of the political spectrum in Japan are also against nuclear. And now, of course, we've got Merkel, who was a physicist, who fundamentally flipped on the issue of nuclear power with the accident of Fukushima Daiichi, and has now become against nuclear power. All for the same reason. They all realize that this is a technology that can destroy the fabric of a country overnight. And it's fundamentally incompatible with civilizations as we know. The fifth point, and my last point, I think I'm running out of time. My fifth point and my last point is that I think if you look back, so first point, they're going to happen frequently, once every decade, somewhere on the planet. Second point, they're becoming more severe, not less severe. Third point, it was only luck that made this accident as less severe as, that's not a good word. It was only luck that made this accident manageable for the northern hemisphere. And I wouldn't even claim it's manageable for Japan. And the fourth point is that this is a technology that can destroy the fabric of the country. The fifth point is that I think 100 years from now, historians are going to look back on the era we're in now as not about being pro-nuclear or being anti-nuclear. My fifth point is that I think 100 years from now, we're going to see this as a battle between energy paradigms. We have, in the 20th century, when I was building nuclear power plants, we had central station power. And it was the only way you could build it at the time. And in the 21st century now, we are heading toward a grid that's distributed generation. And what that means is many small ways of generating power, rooftop solar, windmills, etc., biomass, and on. But small generating capacity connected to a grid that thinks, a smart grid. We've had this experience already. When I did my master's thesis, I needed to go to an IBM 360 computer that was twice as big as this room. It took minutes and minutes to churn the calculations out and cost $2 million. You went to the computer. I have more power now on my laptop for less than $1,000 than that $2 million computer had. So computing has become distributed. Your phone, cell phone. It used to be that phones were hardwired into central station. That paradigm has changed. The last domino to fall in this revolution generated by computing is the paradigm of central station power. And I believe 100 years from now, we will look back on this and say, this wasn't about building an AP1000 in Cumbria or building Hinkley. Hinkley and the AP1000 are symptoms of a much larger battle. And that much larger battle is that the energy paradigm is fundamentally changing. So, and that's my good point. And I want to thank you all for being here tonight and caring so much.